Today, class number 275, I started to call it That Which Is, because that's what we're going to be talking about. And then I started to call it Rest in Heaven, and I'll share that with you in a minute for why I was going to do that. And then it ended up with the reality of heaven. So let's call this the reality of heaven. Now, that which is heaven. And we have to understand that that's all we got. That's all that we have. That's all that is needed. I want to start by reading Ecclesiastes chapter 3. Let's start at 14. Let's read 14 and 15. I know that whatsoever, it never fails. The minute I start something, here comes spam risk on the very phone that I'm reading off of. But let's just ignore that and go on. Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 14 and 15. I know that whatsoever the Lord does, it shall be forever. Now, let's not forget that. Whatever the Lord does, it shall be forever. Now, we know the Lord did heaven. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. God said, let there be light. Now, let's understand, though, that God created the heavens and the earth. So that means that they're created forever. The earth is the Lord's, the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. So God must be looking at a different world, a different earth, and different people than what we're looking at every day. I know that whatsoever the Lord does, it shall be forever. Because God is looking at himself all day and calling it us and calling it himself. Nothing can be added to it and nothing taken from it. And the Lord has so made it that men should reverence him. That which is now already has been, and that which is to be has already been. And God will avenge him who has been persecuted. God avenges all persecution as a result of a man saying, I know this is not what you created for me. You did not create persecution. You did not create discord. You did not create evil. You are not looking at me and judging me as in terms of good and evil. You're doing righteous judgment because you're seeing yourself in me. Today I posted on Facebook's, let me go back to my immediate post. I want to read it to you. It says, wow, Facebook is crazy at times. In the presence of God, there is no discord. We are God's image and likeness. Now rejoice. The crooked places are made straight. The crooked places are made straight because when God created everything, it was already straight. It was never crooked. Nothing can be added to it. Nothing can be taken away. It was always straight. We need a complete understanding of heaven. Now think about how many people you see that'll say stuff like, my loved one passed away on this day so many years ago or so many months ago or whatever, and then they go rest in heaven. As if heaven is somewhere behind the clouds, out, I guess, beyond the sun and the moon, and beyond Mercury and Jupiter, and way out there somewhere. And I guess they think that that's where their loved ones go, and they say, okay, there's a place out there, and that's where my loved one is resting. But when you think about it, when Jesus said, rest in heaven, He's literally saying rest in your head. Rest in the light. Rest in the understanding, because the kingdom of heaven is within. And within what? Consciousness. And where is consciousness? But in the mind, which is God. In him we live and move and have our being. So when we have a complete understanding of what heaven is and where heaven is, we are resting there right now. And nothing can be added to that, and nothing can be taken away. You cannot add worry to a person who is resting in heaven, who is in his or her head saying, I am in the presence of God, and the crooked places are straight. I don't care what I'm looking at out here. I don't care what it looks like. I don't care what it feels like. I still am resting in heaven, because there is no other place. The kingdom of the heavens is among you. It is around you. It is all about you. It is everywhere. That's all there is. And so, therefore, I am at rest there. Whether it looks like it, whether I feel like it or not, I am resting in heaven, because there's no other place. Now, I want to give you a couple of stories that really, really helped me as I was allowing this flow of consciousness, of this flow of what I call a sharing, to come to me. Sometimes I run out of time, because I'd like to have the time to just go and sit down and be pondering and start writing out what it is that I want to say. But I know that sometimes that's impossible. And so it's when I get that little space of time, it's like something will come on you and say, okay, write this down. And you'll sit there and it'll start flowing. And you won't have to think, and you don't have to struggle. It just flows out, because you have entered into a rest. And because you entered into that rest, then the flow of the Spirit starts to take place. And the words come, and you don't have to work at it. Now, here are a couple of stories that I have that helped me tremendously. Lillian DeWaters tells a story about a guy who fell asleep. He was in bed, gone to bed for the night. I don't really remember what the actual scenario was, but all I know is he was sleeping, he was dreaming. And he dreamed he had to go on a very long trip. And then in the dream, he saw himself really befuddled and worrying and just really struggling with the idea that he was going to have to walk. And it was hundreds of miles where he needed to go. And he was going to have to walk because he didn't have a way. And he was like, oh, my God, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And then within the dream, he remembered that he had a car in his garage, and that all he needed to do was pack the car and come out of the garage and leave and go on his journey. He didn't need to create a car. He didn't need to ask God to give him a car. The car was already in the garage, which represents heaven, and he was in the dream, which represents this world. Now, there's another story. There was a lady, she thought that she was so hungry she didn't know what to do. In her dream, she was asleep, dreaming. She was really famished. She didn't know she didn't have any food, none whatsoever. And she was scrounging around in the house in the dream, looking for food and looking for what she was going to do. And in her dream, her refrigerator was bare. And she was like, she didn't know what she was going to do. And suddenly, within the dream, she realized that there was food in the refrigerator. In fact, she went over to a box in her dream, and she was like, there's no cake. There's a box, the cake pan. And there's no cake in the pan. She was just taking a slice of cake. But someone standing beside her realized that there was a cake in the cake box, and all she needed to do was wake up. She didn't need to make a cake. She didn't need to do anything. It was already there. There was a man who needed money. He was in a dream. He dreamed he had no money and he needed to pay a bill that day. And he had no money. He didn't know what he was going to do. But suddenly in the dream, he remembered he had $50 in his wallet that he had forgotten about. The $50 in the wallet represented heaven. The dream of not having anything was the dream of discord, illusion, crooked places. And how many times are we in those same conditions? Every time something is presented to us that we need, we're walking around here in this earth, and it comes up that we need something. And our minds do not immediately go to, yeah, but this is the dream. But if I look in heaven, all things are mine. I already have it. I have it in heaven. If thine eye be single, then is our body full of light. All I'm ever dealing with is heaven. I'm not dealing with this world. This world looks chaotic, a mess, but yet, if I remember what I have in heaven, I don't have to go make anything. I don't have to create anything. The problem is, when you first discover this, the actual outer result does not appear to be immediate. It means that you're walking day by day. And every day, little by little, you're knocking a little bit of the mountain down. You understand that you have the truth, you are the truth, you know the truth, but you have nothing to do with removing discordant appearances from this world. In this world, we seemingly have tribulation day in and day out. But if we keep stepping in the Word, walking in the Word, trust me, I know, it appears that it is just a struggle. But God is faithful. Keep remembering what you have in heaven, and at some particular point when you least expect it, certain things start to, how can I say it? They don't straighten out. They're already straight. You just happen to start seeing that it's straight. You happen to see that the crooked was never crooked, but you were looking at this world. And as Joel Goldsmith says, veil after veil starts to drop off. Veil after veil drops off. Think about the fact that people call it happenstance, luck. Something comes into your life, and especially something coming into your life and you didn't even know you needed it. Those are the ones that are just unfathomable. In other words, God has no need, and God is appearing as who you are. And so when we're presented with these discordant conditions, we have to know that the discordant condition is appearing to God. It says the earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. That means chaos. The chaos was presented to God. So we in this world are nothing more than God walking in the earth, because the Word becomes flesh. But the chaos is coming to God. It's not coming to Michael Orr. The chaos is coming to God. Michael Orr is standing there looking at the chaos, but he's waiting for God to speak within him, because he understands what he has in heaven. He has to. When he doesn't, he starts dealing and fighting with the chaos. Now, I'd like to read you something from Walter Lanyon. I think you'll see my point. Can you imagine the joy of hearing your first symphony after having seen, as far as you were concerned, a soundless orchestra sway a vast number of people, meaning that you were previously deaf? It It would be too wonderful for words, so full of revelation. The joy of untwining the various strands of music that wove themselves into a glorious melody. And yet you would have to admit it had all existed all the time, but you did not hear it because you were deaf. And so the blind one is told of the beauties of nature and the universe. He finally knows all about it, but it still only exists in the mental part of his makeup because he does not experience it. Until you experience a thing yourself, it is only in the realm of the mental or on the plane of imagination, and until it is brought out into actual experience, it is of no practical value to you. For 40 years, the children of Israel roamed across a desert which might have been traversed in a few weeks, but it took them 40 years to see or experience the promised land flowing with milk and honey. When Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is at hand, he stated a clear, concise, and absolute fact. Many believed it mentally, but to see it physically seemed another thing. As there is nothing to be destroyed in all my holy mountain, then something must be restored to its rightful place. The distorted vision that is seeing all sorts of evil is properly aligned. When thine eye becomes single, thy whole body is full of light. The dual nature of man, the prodigal feeding with the swine and the beloved son seated at a sumptuous banquet, must be wiped out. Jesus Christ has to be recognized as one instead of two. The twain shall be one. The body or physical nature of man, which is all that has ever suffered, sinned, and experienced evil, has to be made one with the soul, which has known all the glorious freedom of a prince of the realm, a son of the living God, upon whom all the heavenly gifts have been bestowed. Isn't that wonderful? All we have to do is know that in heaven we are spirit, soul. We are the sons of God, no gender. God has lavished us with all that God is, and when the eye opens up and sees that, we can't become disappointed when the appearances on the outer don't change immediately. We have to continue to walk by faith and not by sight. We have to know that this is a little something that's beyond imagination. This is the reality that is. That's all there is. We can imagine it, which is going to help us to, for lack of a better term, attain it or understand it or realize it. That's an even better word. Imagination, everybody has it. But to start imagining heaven and realizing that all things are in place, Thomas Troward said, order is heaven's first law. There is no disorder. Everything is ordered aright. Remember that says, order my steps in the Lord? I think David said that. Well, your steps are ordered in the Lord because the Lord is not going to be out of order. And when the twain become one, that means I and the Father are one. That means my life is straight. The crooked is made straight. It's made straight in my consciousness. It was always straight in God's consciousness. And when my consciousness and God's consciousness are realized to be one consciousness, there was never anything crooked. Now, why do we have these problems? Why do we have problems as we walk in the earth? We have problems because we have to prove within ourselves the nothingness of discord, the nothingness of problems. We're here to realize heaven. And because we can realize heaven, we can do all things through Christ. Jesus Christ is the Son, is one. There's not Jesus and then there's Christ. Jesus was saying, hey, in and of myself, I can do nothing. He was talking about the personality man. He was talking about the man that you see, that man does nothing. But the consciousness of the man, the consciousness that realizes that it is one with God is Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ in you. Jesus Christ in me, in everybody. There is no other. Now, let's look at a couple of examples of the proof of nothing, of problems, and I think you'll see what I'm talking about here. There was a guy in the Bible, in the Old Testament, his name was Naaman, and he had leprosy. And he was brought to the prophet, and the prophet told him, in other words, he wanted healing. And I think the guy's name was Gehazi. And he brought Naaman to the prophet, and the prophet told him, go down to the Jordan River and dip 7 times, and that his body would be healed. The leprosy would go away. And so he got disappointed and disgusted because the Jordan was a real nasty river. And Gehazi said to him, if the prophet had told you to do something wonderful, or go in all of these beautiful waters that are all over around and told you to do that, you'd have seen something in it, and you'd have been wanting to go do it. But because he told you to go down there and dip in the Jordan 7 times, the nasty river, you don't want to do it. Why not just do what he told you to do? And so the prophet told him, the prophet looked at him like, hey, I see this as it is. You see leprosy. I don't see any. That was the point. He went down into the Jordan River. What, was the Jordan River something special? Was it really something special that would heal you? No. He was proving the nothingness of leprosy. The consciousness of the prophet was what proved which proved the nothingness of sickness and disease. That's what we have to realize. Jesus Christ realized the nothingness of disease. And I think it was Elisha who was the prophet right there who told Naaman to go dip in that water. And so Naaman came up, and his skin was like that of a newborn babe. Then there was the man who was blind. And Jesus spat on the ground and made some type of mud and put it on the guy's eyes, and the guy was healed. So Jesus' spit was different. The dirt was different. The mud healed his eyes. No, Jesus saw the nothingness of that which was appearing to him as something. All of this chaos that's saying it's something is nothing. And when you become one with it, now I know that's crazy me saying that, but what I mean by you becoming one with nothingness means that when you understand nothing is added to nothing. Remember, nothing can be added, nothing taken away. So once we realize the nothingness of something, then the wholeness that is there all the time becomes apparent. How about water to wine? Come on, man. Water to wine. All he was doing was proving that there's no such thing as being out of anything. His consciousness was what was on display that day. Not, I'm going to turn water into wine. Fishes and loaves. Just think about all of those things. Jesus was proving that all things are always in existence in the kingdom of heaven, and there is nothing that we don't have, but it's up to us to remember that we have all things in heaven. So with each problem that's coming to us, do we ask any questions like, did God make this? Is this really going on? Let's look at Genesis 1. Look at that whole thing from start to finish. When God ends up on the 7th day resting, right? What did he say? Everything that I've made I call very good. And Solomon said, wow, nothing can be added to that, nothing taken away. But this stuff just keeps coming at me, and I keep seeing it all day long, and it's turmoil, and it's chaos, and it disrupts it takes over my attention. I see people dying. I see people just sick, hospitals filled up. You're looking at nothing. And the day you start focusing the fact that I am looking at nothing, because there's no way God created hospitals to have people in sick and dying. If God created hospitals for people to get well, wouldn't they all get well? If God created hospitals and all these doctors to do all of these wonderful things for people, why do people keep dying? And, the preachers keep saying, well, they didn't have enough faith. How can they not have enough faith? In him we live, in him we move, in him we have our being. All we have to do is look at it. All we have to do is say, oh, this is what God said about me. And what did God say? Before you called, I answered this already. I answered. Imagine a world where everybody is just going about their days, having everything already in place, no hospitals, no doctors, no sickness, no disease, no poverty, no lack, just bliss. And Jesus said, the kingdom of the heavens is right where you are, all about you and all among you. And I know you can see that in your imagination. Just think about Jesus is walking in the earth amongst all of the chaotic conditions that you could ever imagine. People with withered arms, people with broken legs, mangled, people who can't walk, who can't do anything, blind people all over the place. And he's not paying them any attention at all unless they bring it to his attention. And then he looks and goes, oh, no, straighten out your arm. Why could that man straighten his arm out? Because Jesus realized that there is no such thing as a man with a withered arm. Stand up, take up your bed and walk. Why? Because there's no man who's crippled, not in heaven. So it appears to me that the most important thing that we could ever realize is what's going on in heaven. And again, where is heaven? It's within you. And what does that mean? It's in the mind. It's up in your head. But what's going on in your head? What's going on in heaven? Perfection. Remember the time when in the Bible, well, of course it's in the Bible, but in the Old Testament is what I meant to say. What did God say to Abraham? Walk perfect before me. Now let me ask you something. Where was God except in Abraham's head? Walk perfect before me. Jesus, be ye perfect as your Father is perfect. No wonder he could walk among all of the people and not pay any attention to their sicknesses and their diseases and all this kind of stuff. Here he is walking out on the water, and the disciples in the boat about to capsize, and he's going on by them like nothing is happening at all. He's unconcerned. He said, don't you care that we perish? That was when they were in the boat one time, and he was asleep. Don't you care that we perish? I can imagine Jesus saying, what is perish? Do not pass me by. He's walking on by. Oh, that's all right. If it's you, bid me come. Well, come on. It's like you are spirit. I am spirit. What is the sin that doth so easily beset me? I don't always focus my attention on what is going on in heaven. And when I do, things appear to change. And some things appear to be more difficult than others. However, it doesn't matter. As the man says, the bigger they come, the harder they fall. We have to stay focused on the fact that God is in his heaven and all is right with the world. Now, if God is in his heaven and I am one with God, then I am in heaven and all is right with my world. I know it doesn't look like it. I know it doesn't always feel like it. But it's true. It's true. And so, as I let my imagination just think about the fact, this is not what's going on in heaven. And I can just, as I let my imagination take me there, I get still. I get still. And then heaven just pours itself in the forms of sometimes images. Sometimes I see something, sometimes I don't. But I always feel something. I feel a flow. I feel a warmth. I feel something just it's as if God is saying, come here every day. Come unto me, all you that labor and are heavy laden. I will give you rest. So what's going on in my head is all that matters. Mark 11:22, have faith in God. Now, faith is what? Mind action. And mind action is what? Contemplation. So if in my head, in my consciousness, in mind, I am constantly thinking about God and heaven, that has to cause me to feel some type of a conviction, to feel that I am confident. Confident in what? That God has heard and answered. God knows that this personality man is nothing but the spirit, the soul. God is dealing with soul. God is not dealing with a personality. God is dealing with soul. Mary said, my soul magnifies the Lord. So the personality man must have a soul. In your patience, possess you your soul. So the soul, which is filled with the light of God, is who I am. And that is totally spiritual. For this is a spiritual universe. It is not an appearance universe where, sometimes good, sometimes bad, sometimes up, down, level to the ground. None of that's real. We have to keep allowing that to roll around in our head. We have to allow our imagination to give us a feeling of, okay, here's imagination. What if I could really understand the truth about what's going on in heaven? I'm just imagining myself in heaven having no worries, no concerns. I can imagine bliss. What would it be like if I did not have to concern myself with anything that's going on here in the earth? What would that be like? I would be free. I am free. I can imagine that God has made me free from the law of sin and death. I have nothing to do with that. Whosoever shall say to the mountain, be thou removed. Who is the whosoever that's saying to the mountain except God? God's presence. The crooked has been made straight already. Whatever you desire. This is the part that really touches me. Whatever you desire. What things soever you desire. When you pray, believe that you receive it. Why? What are you receiving? Heaven. Whatever you desire is already yours in heaven. So it has to come, but it comes at the rate of our conviction. It comes based on us understanding that it was never missing. That is so powerful. It was never missing. It never, ever was missing. I can't say that enough. Imagine this. I am a perfect being now in heaven. All about me are the things that I wish and the things that I need. The discordant things that I see and do not like are impermanent, mutable, meaning changing. And the real things of harmony and delight are the things in which I believe and the things which I discern, and I presently see them. I keep saying that over and over and over. I am a perfect being now in heaven. All about me are the things that I wish and the things that I need. Now, when you think about, well, how could I have a need in heaven? Well, there is something called Michael Orr that's walking around here who has a need. But the soul has no need. But the Michael Orr has to have transportation. He has to have food. Michael Orr has to have funding. He has to have sustenance. But his soul is magnifying the law of order in heaven. And everything that is necessary for Michael's existence is provided through his soul, which is the light, which is the intelligence. And the discordant things that I see and do not like are impermanent. They are changing. And the real things of harmony and delight are the things in which I believe and the things which I discern. I see heaven. I see exactly what heaven is. Heaven is order. Heaven is life and life more abundantly. Heaven is truth. Heaven is all there is. This is a spiritual universe. God is spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. The reality of heaven. This is what we have. God has given us everything that pertains to life and godliness. God has placed us in heaven. Creation is finished, has not changed. The Word became flesh. That's how we got here. There is no reality to I was born of Mary and Mars, or that's personality. That's nothing. And it's on its way out the day it got in here. But the reality of who I am was not created. The reality of who I am is the Christ of God, which is here, has an outer form, and in its remembering what heaven is and what he has in heaven, the crooked will always be straight. The crooked is an appearance. The straightness is the reality of truth. This is the reality of heaven. This is where we live, move, and have our being. God, which we are one with, is in his heaven, and all is right with the world. Amen, and so it is.